Welcome everyone to our Villij Talk. My name is Kim and I am the co-founder of the Villij. And tonight we are joined by Nina Purewal,
Hello.
who is the founder of Pure Minds, a social enterprise that conducts meditation and mindfulness workshops. And she's also a national best-selling author. And so for many of you who have been following us, you know that she is the author of, again, a best-selling book called Let That Shit Go. So thank you so much for joining us, Nina. How are you?
I am excellent. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful for the space. And it wasn't until our first conversation about maybe a month ago now that I realized how much we needed this space. So thank you.
Thanks for being here. So for tonight, Villij Talk is really a space that we've built to have conversations about different wellness dimensions. And we always have wonderful guests like Nina come and share a little bit about the work that they do and more about their life. So in terms of how we encourage you to use this space, of course, we encourage you to limit any distractions. So if you can put your phone away, put that on silent. If you can find a space within your home where you have less distractions, that's highly recommended. We also want the space to be one that has mutual respect and sensitivity for everyone as well. This conversation will be recorded. So it is important for us to ensure that everyone can feel comfortable and share their truth and their thoughts, right? So that's very, very important for us. If ever you have questions or comments, you can use the chat. You can also use the raise hand button, but preferably the chat, and we'll try to answer those questions towards the end of the conversation. So last thing is, before we get started, I want to thank you all for being here. Inner Villij, this is just our third week of Inner Villij, and honestly witnessing this community grow day by day, and the beautiful words of encouragement and just engagement that we're seeing in the forum has been absolutely beautiful. So thank you all for being here, for showing up for yourselves. And of course, we we want to send gratitude to the land in which you're joining us from as well. So we're going to get into it. And Nina, I don't know about you, but usually when I have some of these conversations, one of the things that I do to kind of reduce a little bit of the anxiety and excitement is I like to do some deep breath. Mm-hmm. So, this week has been a heavy week for women of color, right? And in particular for our Asian sisters and brothers as well. So I would like to take the time to invite everyone to engage in some deep breaths with us as a community breath before we actually start this conversation. And so I'm just going to invite everyone, if you can take a moment to take 3 deep breaths with us. And something that I always recommend as well is just kind of maybe put in one of your hands on your belly. You can keep your eyes open or you can close it. And just get comfortable, right? So I will go ahead with some cues to kind of guide the moment. And so we will begin now. So take a deep breath in and release. Deep breath in and release. And one last deep breath in and release. Thank you. So I see that we have quite the full room, Nina. So I'm really excited for this. So let's just start off. We last had a conversation, I think it was last month. Since then, how have you been?
Such a loaded question. I've been all over the place, to be honest. Bad days and good days. Like you said, it's been a really heavy week, and just taking in everything going on around the world. Especially in North America, and healing through that, working through that. Working through the anger, working through the frustration, the misunderstanding, as a nation, as a community, within families. It's been a lot. But trying my best to stay grounded through it all, and also feel the emotions, because I think that's okay and that's important. How have you been?
Yeah, absolutely. And I definitely want to extend this question to everyone joining us. So let us know in the chat. How are you? As loaded that question can be, or as simple as it can be. If you are doing well, I think that's something that we definitely want to recognize as well. For myself, it's been just tons of ups and downs, even throughout my day. So today started my day a little down, and then it slowly went up. And for the rest of the evening after this, it can go down again as well. So that's just something that I'm learning to be okay with.
Yeah.
And really just take it day by day. But that's essentially how I can say like how I'm doing. And of course, I'm excited to be here. So that's this is a little part of the light for this week, based off everything that's been going on, right? I think it's kind of nice to look forward to these little ups and downs, especially the ups. So yeah, actually we have a lot of people sharing about the same thing. Yeah, ups and downs for sure. Fluctuated with emotions. Definitely I feel that.
Overwhelmed. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you said taking it one day at a time. And I think some days for me, it's 1 hour at a time or 1 minute at a time. And I've learned to honor it all, because I used to be that, inherently happy person that just always was smiling. And I've learned to not do that anymore. And if someone asks me if I'm okay and I'm not, I say I'm not. I'm not like, I'm fine, everything's great, So I think that that's really important too in the day to day.
Yeah. And you mentioned something really that really stood out to me. So you mentioned the word honor, right? And so that brings me to my next question in terms of, tell us a little bit about where you are from, right? I know that there usually is like, who are you? But it's like, I'm interested to know, like, where are you from? Talk to us a little bit about family and heritage, lineage.
Yeah, so I was, so I'm Canadian. Obviously, I was born in Canada, in just north of Toronto, and I've been here my whole life. My parents are from India, so they were both born in India from very different parts. My mom's from the north, my dad was from the south, but they actually met in Ghana in Africa, because both of my grandfathers were UN diplomats, and they were stationed in Ghana, Africa, in the 70s. And so that is where they met. In terms of lineage, my parents are Hindu. I consider myself spiritual, but not super religious, if that makes sense. And I've been in Toronto since. I used to go back to India a lot more as a child. I haven't been since I was 19. But it's a really interesting time for me, because Kim and I talked about, connecting with our roots again, and working through some of the pain that we didn't acknowledge and dismissed growing up, as women of color. But society kind of all around us was white. The shows we were watching, the media, people in class. And so in terms of heritage and connecting, that's something I'm really working on this year, is going back to my roots, decolonizing wellness, if you will, and just kind of owning this space and feeling feeling empowered to own it.
Yeah, I love that. And I feel like this is a conversation that I've been having a lot more as I meet new people and that are on similar journeys, like we discussed. And just, taking the time to acknowledge and then sometimes maybe honor our heritage. I'm a second generation Canadian as well. So I, born here as a Canadian. And then there's just so much parts of me that I'm like looking for answers, and I'm having to kind of, ask my parents and my grandparents and just kind of, wanted to know more about them in order to understand more about myself. Right. So I know as well that at a young age, right, you experience a tragedy that really shaped who you are, right? So talk to us a little bit about the Nina of today. Who is she, and how is she choosing to show up?
Yeah, the Nina of today has come a long way. So I did go through a childhood tragedy. When I was 16, I lost my dad and my brother, and typically in talks I leave it at that, but I feel like I can be vulnerable tonight with all of you guys. I lost my dad and brother to a murder suicide. My parents were going through a pretty awful marital discourse, and that's how it ended. And the detectives on the case basically told me that I was in the plan to be gone as well. But the universe had different plans for me. So the Nina today has gone through a lot of healing, a lot of introspection. To be honest, I suppressed everything for 20 years. For 20 years, I tell people I was like this talking head. I don't even think I was in my own body. I don't know how I got my university degree. I climbed the corporate ladder and I did well, and I had a lot of, success in those terms. But in terms of finding myself and understanding who I am, that didn't happen till much late, like till maybe 5 or 6 years ago. That's when I really went on the journey to find myself and unravel all the hurt, all the pain, all the anger, all the trauma. And so the Nina today is really trying to, as we talked about, honor who I am, and heal all of that from the past. And I don't think you get to a point where you're like, I'm healed, I'm good. It's a lifelong journey. But I did about 5 years ago go on an intentional journey to forgive my dad, because I realized how much anger and resentment I was holding on to, and it wasn't affecting him. Like, he's dead and gone. It was affecting me. And I kind of realized the only way to move through that was with forgiveness. And so that's kind of what I've been working on for the last 5 years. And then the last year, it's really just been trying to own who I am.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Just the fact that you were able to experience that, and that was what was planned for your life, right? And it's interesting how sometimes these experiences shape who we are. And so I think a lot about some of the things that I read in your book, right? And one of the things that really stuck out to me was at the very beginning of the book. And so, you thanked your loved ones. And in particular, you say, thank you to my greatest teacher, who turns out to be your mother, Rita. Talk to us a little bit about that relationship that you had with your brother.
Yeah, emotional. My mom, okay, so my mom was my best friend. My mom and I did everything together. Obviously, after the event, we became super close, and she almost became a different mom because she was so controlled and suppressed by my dad, that she, now as a mother, I realized she was probably just completely emotionally unavailable. I mean, she still loved us unconditionally, and she was still a great mom. But when my dad passed away, she just completely soared, and it was like a different person. My dad wouldn't even let her go to the mall on her own. He wouldn't let her travel for work. She was just under his thumb. And then suddenly she became this free spirit. And, she would call me up and say, okay, I just booked a ticket to Costa Rica. I'm going rappelling down waterfalls. And it's like she became a kid again. I'm going ATVing in the mountains in Jasper. So she owned herself again, and she could be herself again. So that mom and I became very, very close. We did everything together. We timed our commutes to work together and talked in the morning every single day. So that was my relationship with her. And she was incredibly spiritual. She did her corporate thing, but behind the scenes, sorry about that. Put my phone on airplane mode. It is on airplane mode. Behind the scenes, she taught meditation, she taught spirituality. People loved her. Like the sun just would shine out of her smile. And a lot of my friends were closer to her than their own mothers. Like that was the kind of woman she was. And she not only taught me about, spirituality and ancient wisdom, but she lived it. She didn't just talk the talk, she walked the walk. And that's what was so inspiring about her, is that she just spoke her truth all the time, even back then, before it was a thing.
I love that. And it's just so beautiful to know that she was able to kind of radiate, right, after the experiences that she had been through as well. And so fast forward today, I know that you have a little girl. What's something that motherhood has taught you?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I think having a daughter too, it changes things a little bit, right? Because you do certain things and suddenly, and you don't need to have a child to know this, but part of you is suddenly is like, oh, why am I doing this to myself? Would I let my own child endure this? Would I allow her to be treated this way at work? Or, would I allow a friend to talk to her this way? Why am I letting it happen to me? So I think having her has made me realize, like, you shouldn't have to have, you don't need a child to come into that. It's like, why am I doing this now? Because I have her. I should have been doing this all along. But it's really empowered me to think, what I want for her, I should want for myself too. All the things I say, no, I wouldn't want that for her. Well, then I shouldn't be doing it to myself. So that's big. And then, just seeing the world through the eyes of a child. So I did mention that my mom passed away. She was diagnosed with Lou Gehrig's or ALS in 2012, and she passed away within 2 years. And I was 8 months pregnant, I was 4 months pregnant when she passed away. So becoming a mom was really polarizing because I went through this tragic loss and then, became a mother without having a mother. It was a tough time, but now, my daughter's 6 and I see a lot of my mom and her, and it's one of the greatest ways to practice mindfulness is to just hang out with a kid, put your phone away and, see the world through their eyes. It's magical. And you could do this with your friends' kids or your nieces or nephews or, family, friends, kids, just sitting and playing with them is probably one of the most mindful things you can do because it really takes you into the present and the here and now.
I love that. I mean, as an aunt of like over 7 nieces and nephews, that is something that I find when I spend time with them, those are one of my very, 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 and these moments don't happen as much as they should, but those are one of my moments where I feel like I can actually be present. It's really with like being just around children and just seeing life through their eyes a little. And that's something that I'm realizing more and more for myself. And I love that you mentioned this this idea of kind of, why wait until you care for someone else to really kind of, show yourself that same compassion, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm interested to know for everyone that's joining us, like, what's one of the greatest lessons that you've learned from life, from a loved one, from a mentor? Let us know in the chat. I think like that's something that we can all kind of align on, and I would love to hear what everyone has to share. Personally, that's something that I try to think about, and I definitely know that it changes. But for me, one of the biggest influence in my life was my grandmother, who passed away in November of last year. And for her, one of the things that I realized that she taught me was really just this importance of kind of like showing up. She was this woman who was, I mean, just a little bit of everything. She could be your best friend, but she'll also, let you know when you're wrong, you know. And she just always had a way of showing up. And that's something that I realized that I admire. Because I do feel like even though, I may be in the rooms at times, or I was in certain environments, I realized that I wasn't always showing up, right? And I think that's something that we can dive into a little later, as I know it's covered in the book as well. But yeah, that's something that I've learned from her. And that's like, as I'm getting older, I'm like, oh, I've really appreciated the fact that she taught me kind of how to show up. So what do we have? Sharon. Yes, so we have Chanel mentions that my daughter told me at 4-year-old that I could do anything. She held my hand and she slept when I finished my last university degree. Oh my goodness. That's just
incredible.
Pure bliss. Yeah, that's beautiful. Thanks
They're
for
wise.
sharing.
They're wise
They
little
really
ones,
are.
I'm telling you. They're so intuitive. Like they pick up on energy too. Even if you're acting all happy and feeling off, they pick up on it. They know. They know.
Oh,
I love that, Chanel. That's beautiful.
yes, they definitely do pick up on energy. So so much of what we've discussed before tonight, I just see so much of myself in you. And I kind of love that.
Thank you.
One of the things that I really, really resonated with is that I know that there was a point in time, and you mentioned it earlier, where you were, climbing the corporate ladder. You were super successful. Also, you were in the marketing field. And then one day you kind of decide, well, this isn't for me. And I definitely went through something similar like that. What was that moment for you that led you, to be everything that you are today?
Thank you for asking. That's such a great question. And I feel like ever since, my dad and brother passed away and I got into spirituality, a part of me, it was such a big part of me, but that was in the 90s. And I always knew that would be the forefront of me. I didn't know how to turn that into, a profession or, make wellness as a living. So I just got a business degree because that's what everyone did. And I went to business school and had a great career. And then in 2010, the perfect storm happened. So this 1-year course came up in California. It was a 1-year course on ancient spiritual philosophy and meditation. It was in an ashram. My mom basically called me one day and said, "Hey, I found out this course is happening. I'm going. I'm gone." And just a side note lesson from her is that she actually worked for Bank of Montreal for 24 years. She had 1 more year to her retirement. She was going to put in her 25th year. And most people would say, I'll do my 25 years and then I'll move to retirement and chill afterwards. And not my mom. My mom lived in the moment. So she went to the course. It was a 1-year course. And the month that she came back was when she got diagnosed with ALS. And she basically thank God she went to the course, because she would have spent her last year of healthy life in corporate, but she got to spend it with me and in this ashram. So back to 2010, that opportunity came up, and I was in corporate, and I was going up the ladder. I wanted to be, the next marketing CMO, and I wanted to climb the ladder, but a part of me was just yearning to go to this course. It was in the height of my career, but I thought, it's now or never, gotta go now. So that happened. And then simultaneously I was working, so I worked for Cadbury at the time, and I was on the global launch for Dairy Milk Fair Trade chocolate. And so I got to go, ironically, this is coming full circle, I got to go to Ghana, because that's where we source our cocoa beans, as if I still work there. That's where Cadbury source their cocoa beans from, or cacao beans, and the cacao pods and the cacao trees. And so I got to go back and see the impact of fair trade farms. And we got to speak to a doctor when we were there who, would go into these farms if they were fair trade and see patients once a month. And we asked him, what's the biggest thing you're noticing? And he said, diabetes and heart disease have been on the incline in recent years. And we said, well, why? He said, well, because everyone is so used to living organically off their farm. And suddenly these companies are coming in, and, there's little small huts or convenience stores that have cheese and mayonnaise and things that they're not used to eating. And so then, when I went back to work after that incredible, phenomenal, life-changing trip, I remember that we had a global town hall, and Kraft had just acquired Cadbury, and I literally, my eyes were like, I had to stop, like try not to cry, because the, global head was talking about how, the reason that Kraft acquired Cadbury was because they wanted to enter in markets where Cadbury was doing well, which was a lot of kind of, third world country. And, I thought, wow, I'm not an evil individual, but this is what's kind of feeding into, the sad parts about globalization. And I just didn't want to stand for it anymore. And again, it's not that you're a bad person or it's a bad thing if you work for these companies, but, I just got to the point where I'm like, I don't know if I can, because I think I was so close to the ground. I thought, I don't know if I could do this anymore. So this course came up, and that trip to Ghana, and I just thought, this is the end. I gotta follow my heart here. So that was kind of my defining moment.
Yeah. And so you decide to leave. How do you come up with this gem? What happens? How do you decide to say, okay, I'm writing a book?
Oh my gosh. It's funny because I came back, and I came back so inspired. How do I spread this knowledge? How do I spread ancient wisdom? Like the year was phenomenal. It was tough, but it was phenomenal. And again, it was 2010. So yoga was a thing, but meditation and spiritual philosophy was still, like, I was always that woo-woo person with like quotes everywhere and, on my desk, but the world wasn't kind of catching up. So I did a few years in cause marketing, and then working for like an environmental startup, because I'm like, okay, at least it makes me feel good. And then I had my daughter, and then that's when, my mom got sick, she passed away. And then I had a daughter. All that happened in 2 years. And when my mom got sick, that was kind of when I thought, this is another reminder for me of how fleeting life is, how short and quick life can just go. And, it's almost like I had those moments where if you had 1 year left, what would you do? Would you work in corporate? Probably not. And so after, I had my daughter, I went on that kind of forgiveness journey with my dad. And then my co-author and I, Kate, we started doing workshops in Toronto called, Mindful AF, and Learn How to F and Meditate. And they kind of went viral just because they were just so approachable. I had zero intentions to write a book, but was actually approached by HarperCollins because they caught wind of the workshops we were doing. And basically asked us to look. I failed grade 12 English. Okay, like I had no intentions on writing a book. I hated English. But you know, it kind of fell in my lap. And when we agreed to do it, they actually told us we had nine weeks to write it. So we took 9 weeks, wrote the book. That was a blessing and a curse at the same time. But you know, a lot of the book, I think the reason why we could write it in 9 weeks is because I almost felt like it was coming through me. The messages were just almost coming through me, because it's been stuff that I've been contemplating for 24 years, right? Like this book was also like a love story to myself. It was all my truths, and so much shifted in me after writing it, because the authenticity chapter is one of my favorites as well, because I had such a hard time owning who I was. But after writing the book, I was like, this isn't paper, this is inked. I'm telling, you know, sharing with the world tips on how to own themselves. Time for me to step up, because it's like intellectually I knew all these truths, but I wasn't owning up to them. So yeah, that's kind of the story of the book. It was never one of those things where it's like, I've always wanted to write a book, but I had all of it in me. And that's just how it manifested. And sometimes when you let go of trying to figure out, you know, what it is that you want in a monetary terms, or that you want, you know, in terms of how society looks at things, and you just think about, what is it that I want to do? And at the end of the day, I wanted to spread ancient wisdom. That was my objective. It's crazy how things just start to manifest in ways you don't really think, you don't really imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so what was the process? Did you write the book and then you came up with the title and the colors for everything? Or is it the title that was there first and then that helped to write the book? Talk to us about, you know.
Let me tell you about the title. We almost walked away from the whole opportunity. So this stays here in this group, even though it's being recorded. But so they actually, I guess, decided on this book. HarperCollins, their executive team, decided that they wanted I'm sure you all have heard of the book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. So they wanted like a mindfulness / meditation version of that. So they already decided that, but they didn't have their authors. And they called the book Fuck Meditation. So they approached us and said, we think you're the perfect authors. We have this book, it's called Fuck Meditation. So Kate and I were like, the book sounds amazing, but that title, you know, no. So we didn't say anything to them. They asked us to write a proposal. So we wrote a 25-page proposal. They wanted every single tip laid out in a week. So we put that together. We sent it to them. Said, we love it. Said, great. Said, come in for a meeting. Said, good, because we got to talk to you about something. And so we went in and, you know, we said, this is like, we love this opportunity, but we cannot stand behind fuck meditation. It's disrespectful. It's not appealing to people who want to meditate. It's not appealing to people who don't want to meditate. And I get it. Their premise was, I don't have time to meditate. How do I find peace in the everyday? I don't have, screw meditation. That's too much of a thing. Like, that's too heavy for me. How do I actually find peace in the everyday without meditation? You know? And their other ask was, they wanted us to write a book on mindfulness, but not use the word mindfulness in the whole book, because they thought that would be too intimidating for people. So that's when we kind of, we said, well, we can't write a book that's time. Like, I can't put my name behind a book that says fuck meditation. It's part of my culture. People will find it super disrespectful. I can't do it. And so they said, well, we've already signed off on this title. So Kate and I actually walked away. And we went to a coffee shop. We called our family friends, like, yeah, it's not happening. It's cool while it lasted. And then they actually called us back and they said, you know what? No, we think you guys are the right authors. And Let That Shit Go was actually one of the 100 tips in the book, because the book is filled with 100 tips on how to find more peace and happiness. So Let That Shit Go was the name of one of the tips. They said, can we call it Let That Shit Go? And we said, yes. And I loved Let That Shit Go, because I talk a lot about how our true nature is happiness. Our true nature is happiness. It's joy. It's peace. That's everything I learned in spirituality, studying it from monks. But we can't access it. We can't experience it all the time because we have so much shit in the way, you know? And if you think of us as toddlers, we were inherently happy, right? There's nothing that would upset us like it does in adulthood. So what happened over time? We built up all this shit. So let that shit go is just all about acknowledging all the stuff we're holding on to and moving through it. So it all worked out in the end. And if it was called fuck meditation, I don't know if we'd be having this conversation right now.
Probably not. Probably not.
Right?
And so thank you so much for sharing that with us. I can only imagine what it was like living through that moment of like this, opportunity. And then, but what I really like is that you guys stood up for yourselves, right? I think sometimes, especially as a woman of color, I know I've done that many times where it's like, you've been wanting this opportunity. You're like, it doesn't really sit right with me, but, should I go through with it? If I walk away from it, will this ever happen again? And you walked away from it and it happened as it needed to happen. So in the book, it talks a lot about peace and happiness. And of course, saying that, there's just so much in the way. And that's one of the reasons why we don't get to experience as much as we would like to. What does happiness look like for you?
I think happiness, it's a great question. I think happiness is when I'm present, when I'm in the here and now, to be quite honest. I mean, of course, there's happiness in, external things. Of course, there's happiness in the condo that you buy or the relationship that you're in, the vacation that you take, although nobody's taking vacation right now. There's happiness in all those things, but it's fleeting. It's temporary because one day the condo makes us happy. The next day we're so stressed about the mortgage or we're stressed about the rent. And then one day our kid makes us happy. The next day they drive us crazy, and our partners or our families, or, you can book the vacation and be all excited, but then it could rain the entire time and you're pissed off, right? All the things that, be aware of the things that make you happy because they do make you happy, and there's nothing wrong with that happiness. It's just temporary because that same thing, even social media, right? Like, we love Instagram and then we see the wrong post and we're triggered, right? So for me, happiness is when I am in the here and now. And I think too, the other thing we do with happiness is we place it on something. When this happens, when I find my partner, I'll be happy. When, I get that promotion, I'll be happy. When I achieve this, I'll be happy. But 10 years ago, you probably wanted what you have right now, right? And we forget that so quickly. So I really think I know it sounds cheesy, but I do think true happiness is when we can just sit in the moment and be so grateful. And I know it's a tough world out there. I know there's so much to grieve and to feel, heavy about. I'm not taking that, away at all. But sometimes it's for even the most trivial things. When I saw my mom deteriorate and get sick, and some days I would just be like, you know what, I'm just so grateful I can brush my own teeth, or I can feed myself, or I can go for a walk when I want to, because she wasn't able to do that. So when we can just be in the here and now, which is, I want to preface by saying, I think mindfulness, there's a misconception that mindfulness means like, you have to be present 24/7. But nobody can. I don't even think monks in the mountains do that. That's impossible. So for me, mindfulness is just being aware of all the places my mind is going, and bringing it back and bringing it back and bringing it back. Because we think 60,000 thoughts a day. So if we can just have moments in the day where we're just blissful and grateful and here and present and I'm alive, I think that's when I'm most happy, when I'm experiencing it in the moment. But I will be really happy when we can go on vacation again.
Of course. Of course. And I love, and that's, I think, what I loved about this book is because in this book, right, you talk about there being shit in the way, and the fact that that's okay, like that happens, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's about working through that, right? It's like accepting the fact that, okay, you're not gonna have this everlasting like happiness and you're always gonna be in this state of mind. But it's just about like reframing that and learning how to build tools to help us kind of get through those moments where there is shit in the way.
Totally. And
Yeah.
sorry, if I can just add that what's really empowering and liberating about that is that you're not dependent on anything external when you get to that point. And I don't get me wrong, I still fault on wanting more followers or all of those things, but when you can experience happiness based on what's within and not everything around you, you're so much more in control of your own happiness. I had a monk teacher once say to me, you should always be 100%. No one should be able to add to that. No one should be able to take away from that. It's all, the power is all within you. And when you start thinking about happiness that way, you stop depending on someone treating you a certain way or someone accepting you or that promotion or external validation. It's all within.
Yeah, I love that. So the book, for those of you who have not had the chance to read it yet, one of the things for me before I even like purchase a book or think about looking at it, I always like to go ahead and look at like the table of contents and see how the chapters are broken down. And that's one of the things that I loved about this book is like the different chapters. So you have chapters on self-love, perspective, forgiveness, authenticity, which is one of my favorites chapter as well. I know you said it was one of yours. And so, especially in that particular chapter, this idea, because it keeps coming up for me, and I'm noticing these are conversations I'm having with friends right now. It's talking about, as a woman, how do you live within your authenticity, right? And how do you show up with that authenticity in your workspace, at home, really just any environment that you're entering? What do you say to women that feel like they can't always authentically be themselves?
I say I see you, and I say I hear you. I say I am you often. It took me a really long time to own who I am. Even down to my hair. Like I would straighten my hair. Nobody saw my hair curly for like a decade. Suddenly, I showed up one day with curly hair and I was like, oh my God, because I grew up, with mostly white, blonde, straight hair. And that's what I saw on TV. And, even the picture, I laugh at the picture now, that the one that you had, before we enter, because of course the photo shoot, I had to straighten my hair. I wouldn't do that anymore. But it's not easy, especially being women of color, to show up as ourselves, because that's slowly becoming the norm, but it's far from the norm that we grew up in. So it's baby steps, and you have to feel comfortable. There were people who knew I had curly hair and thought, you should wear your curly hair all the time. I didn't feel comfortable in it. So, just because it's an authentic part of you, if you don't feel comfortable, you still have to honor that. But I think it goes back to, there's a tip in the book, and it's all about, the only opinion that matters is the opinion you have of yourself. Because honestly, everyone's going to have an opinion of you. You sit around for Thanksgiving or Christmas dinner, there's this exercise in the book. Your grandma thinks you're a sweetheart, your mom thinks like you're a tyrant, your sibling is like so annoyed by you, your niece thinks you're the most loving aunt. Everybody has a different lens, and you can do that in the boardroom too. Like if you're sitting at work, everyone sees you in a different way. So it doesn't matter what people think. What matters is how much you love yourself enough to show up as you are. But I think it's a combination of things. It's one aspect is the physical, being comfortable in my own hair and skin, and then there's aspects that are emotional, like not giving your power away, saying no, letting go of the shoulds. We talk about the shoulds in the book. You know, you should be making this much money, or you should have this many kids, or have kids, or you should be in a relationship right now. You know, whether it's from your family or from society, from the media, you should look this way. You should have this kind of a body. I mean, we're bombarded by it. And if the should is important to you, if you feel like you want to, you know, own a home by a certain age, that's great. That's a goal. But if it's coming from a should, or just because all of your friends or family are doing it by this age, F it, you know, like let that shit go, because it's again, everybody's opinion. So I think authenticity, there's so many elements about it. And I feel like just when I'm owning myself, there's more to learn. So I'll share with you an interesting story. So in October, Kate, my co-author, decided that she really wanted to pursue climate change and, you know, fight social justice and the intersectionality. And she really wants to get heavy into that. Whereas I want to do that as well, but my focus is still mindfulness, meditation, and spiritual wisdom. And so, you know, love her to pieces. We're still amazing friends, but she said she kind of walked away from, you know, all media opportunity and, you know, engagements like this and whatnot. And when we made that decision, a part of me was so scared. And I'm like, where is this fear coming from? And I realized it was because Kate's white. And for some reason, I felt more accepted if I was showing up to a media interview or showing up to a corporate workshop with someone who was white. And I couldn't believe that that's how I thought. Like, I was so shocked that that's what came. And it started to come back because, you know, we do big, you know, corporate workshops. You know, we did like 350 partners at Deloitte. And, you know, she's like, you do the meditation, because I've been meditating for 15 years. I was like, no, that's okay. You can do it. And I suddenly realized, like, why am I doing that? Why am I not doing it? I'm afraid of judgment. I'm afraid that people are gonna go, oh yeah, that's the Indian girl. Of course, she knows meditate, you know, all that voices in my head. And so now I'm working on, you know, showing up in my skin color with my curly hair and take it or leave it, you know. And it's empowering, but it's hard. It's not always easy to show up as a person of color.
I felt that on so many different levels, especially, you know, I think that's what was one of the driving force behind Chanel and I to create the Village. It's like, we're just tired of not being able to, you know, really be ourselves as much as we wanted to. And now, I mean, I get on like conference calls sometimes with my head tie. And, you know, like, I feel good about that. Or, you know, like, I'm going to have these box braids in or these locks in today, and tomorrow I'm going to switch it up. And that's fine. And so just kudos to you for continuing this journey. And I know you're like really pushing through with it, and I love to see it. You know, we love to see it as a community. And I know that you're going to be coming back to Inner Village next month, right? So Nina is coming back to Inner Village next month to provide 2 amazing workshops. And again, we're going to be, you know, looking at the work that she's done in the book. In particular, the workshops are going to be on forgiveness and authenticity, which I love. Especially, I already told you about my love for authenticity, but the forgiveness part, I need work.
Yeah, that's a tough one. It's a tough one, man.
It's a tough one.
2 years.
It really is. Yeah. So can you share some last piece of wisdom, and we'll get into some questions because I know some people have questions. Give us some piece of wisdom or some advice, right, on kind of like, how do you begin the process to let that shit go, or some of it go?
The biggest piece in letting shit go is being aware that it's there, because we have all of the shit in the way often is so subconscious. We don't even realize it's there. Like, I didn't even know I had to forgive my dad. I didn't even realize until 20 years later. I actually read a letter that a girl had wrote her father, who wanted to come back into her life, who had sexually abused her. And she said, you know, the only way I can let you back in my life is to forgive you. And forgiveness does not mean letting someone back in your life. It does not mean, you know, righting a wrong or excusing a behavior. That's not what it means. Forgiveness is, we'll get into this more in the workshop, but it's really about you. But being aware of what's there that you're holding on to is the biggest step in letting shit go. Because like I said, I suppressed for 20 years. So the only way to let it go is to bring it up, which is hard work. It's tough work. It's not easy. Bringing it up, acknowledging that it's there, then you can let it go. But, you know, like I said, we think on average 60,000 thoughts a day, and we're aware of less than 1% of them. We're aware of less than 1% of them, and 80% of them are said to be negative or self-deprecating. So we're constantly shit talking and we don't even know we're doing it. So the biggest step in letting go is doing the work to understand what we're holding on to. Because a lot of us live very, we keep ourselves busy so we don't have to go there. And that's the other thing I learned in the ashram, because I totally unplugged. And so much came up for me that year and a lot of this is happening in the pandemic. You know, we're not as occupied, we're not as busy. So suddenly shit's coming up. And that's normal. It's because suddenly stuff we haven't dealt with perhaps is coming to surface. So the biggest piece in letting go is understanding what we're holding on to.
Yeah. Oh, listen, when I read your book, and you guys can see like highlighted,
I know,
and
the
Post-it.
I was like, yes. Girl.
I mean, no, it's there are some real gems in here. And thank you so much for taking the time to take this opportunity to write the book in 9 weeks. I mean, that's incredible.
There was 4 months of editing after that. I just want to say it's not total like crap.
So as I mentioned, before we get into the questions, as I mentioned, Nina's going to be back with us on April 4th to host a authenticity workshop, and on April 11th to host a forgiveness workshop. So those are your first 2 Sundays of the month of April. So we'll definitely be posting those events very soon. You can always plug it into your calendar for now. So I do want to take the time to open up the space for some questions. Feel free to go ahead and post those in the chat. I don't think we've missed any. I think we've covered most.
Yeah, thank you to Shavaya and Caitlin and Alyssa for all of your positive feedback.
Yes.
You both have the most soothing voices. That's so sweet.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I had a question for you. As I'm sort of navigating a journaling journey right now. But one of the things that I'm trying to do more of is more of like a mindful journaling. I want to practice, you know, really being mindful of the things that I'm writing, because, you know, we say that the things that we say have hold power, but the things that we write, I feel like have, you know, sometimes even more power. So, you know, what are some tips for mindful journaling?
It's funny that you position that by saying, I really want to think about what I'm writing, because I actually think mindful journaling. Don't think. I would say 3 things I do. One is gratitude journaling. That really helps getting to mindful space. The other one is, and this is in the book, the mind dump. If things are coming up for you, if you're having a day, if things are bubbling up, just write it down. And sometimes when you're pissed at a friend or something, you can write the whole email. You know, don't have to send it. You can have all the cuss words and everything, but it just gets it out of you. And then I speed journal sometimes too. And that's, you know, if trauma or something's come up, I write without thinking, without judging, because self-judgment also, you know, judgment from others is one thing, but self-judgment is also prevalent. So writing without judging, without thinking, just letting it flow out of you is a really great mindful technique as well.
Okay, well noted on that. And then we have Tamara that shared mind dump is my fave. I do it every day after work. Um, and that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I started therapy last year, and that's one of the things that I've
Yay.
been kind of working through is this idea of self-judgment.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the exercises my therapist gave me was to write a list of think about all the decisions that you've made in your life and think about the ones that have had positive outcomes and the ones that have had negative outcomes and just write a list. 2 sheets of paper, write a list. Positive incomes on one side, negative outcomes on the other side. And the list of positive outcomes was so much more longer than the ones for negative outcomes.
Right.
Right. And she said, that's right there, right? So this idea of judging and also self-doubt, where does that stem from? When you've had, every time you think of that, you think of this list. And that's essentially what I do now. Anytime
That's
those,
incredible.
the chattiness comes to start again, I think of that list. So
yeah. And how powerful to see it.
Yeah.
Not
exactly.
just to know it, to see it.
Exactly. So yeah, mind dump works. So we have a question. How has your relationships changed with friends when you began to come to terms with your trauma and embrace mindfulness?
For me, I would say, oh my God, there's so much here. I would say that, people who genuinely, unconditionally, meaning no conditions, love you, will be there for you, will hold space for you. And there are people that didn't. There are quite a few people I let go of after I wrote the book. Hope they didn't take the title seriously or personally. But were very toxic, very, very toxic for me. Didn't honor who I was, constantly judging me, friends and close family. And most of the really, really close friends have been amazing, incredible throughout. But you kind of, as you move through things, as you heal, as you shift, as you change as a person, you're going to realize, who is really there for you, who is really happy for you, and who isn't. And the people who aren't, let that shit go. I'm done with toxic people. I literally have no more toxic people in my life. No space for it, no time for it. Been through enough shit. Don't need your toxicity on top of it.
That part, I love that. One last question, or there's 2 last questions I see. So we have someone that's interested in Vipassana, but is very scared. So she's wondering, do you have any thoughts about Vipassana? And if you have any other recommendation on kind of like where to start?
I feel like I'm not qualified to comment on that, but I would just say with Vipassana, make sure you go to the right teacher. Like, go to someone who knows what they're talking about, who has history, who, knows the pros and cons, knows the risks, or, that would be, I can't comment on it specifically because I don't teach it, but I would just say, make sure you are going to a teacher who is well qualified.
Yeah, that's very important. It's part of the journey. Last question. So, are there baby steps you can suggest to gently bring up the issues when we need to let go? It's overwhelming most times when I tackle it, and then I avoid it / distract myself.
I think what you said in your question, Tatiana, is exactly it, just baby steps. The moment I realized I needed to forgive my dad was scary. It was scary. And it wasn't like I jumped in right away. It was a 2-year intense process. So if you do, meditation is a great place when you quiet your mind. That's when sometimes stuff comes up. Unplugging and going, on a nature walk, having a deep conversation with a friend, all these things can bring stuff up. But acknowledging that it's something that has come up and to let go is half the battle. Because once you know it's there, and so you can acknowledge it and then just be like, I'm not ready. Maybe next year I'll go to therapy for this, or maybe in 2 years. Right now, like, it's okay to avoid, it's okay to distract yourself. You just, because something comes up, don't feel that pressure that, okay, got to let it go now. Healing is a journey, and it's an intense process. So, I think just going, like, understanding how to bring things, what to bring up by meditating, by going for walks, by reflecting, journaling, all that stuff can bring stuff up. But when you see it, don't feel pressure to let it go immediately, because it doesn't work that way. I mean, even our thought patterns, something as small as our thought patterns, take months or years to shift. So the big things, it's okay to say, I'm going to distract myself. I'm going to avoid this for now because I'm not ready.
Well, Nina, thank you so much for sharing with us tonight. This is really just like one of a kind experience. And I mean, I've been seeing this book in the bookstores. I've seen it on best-selling lists. So to have you here and have this conversation with you for Inner Village with us is a complete moment of gratitude. So we thank you for being who you are and sharing with us. Again, Nina's going to be joining us next month. Nina's also in Inner Village. So if ever you wanted to speak to her, you can. She's approachable. She is literally the homegirl now.
You can DM me on Instagram too. I'll respond to you.
Yes, exactly.
But yeah, thank you. Thank you for, you and Chanel for putting this together, and for this entire community, for everybody showing up tonight. I mean, this helps me own me. And like I said, I didn't even realize, like, the stuff I talked about on here tonight, I don't think some of the things I've never talked about in any group setting, in any workshop, in any lecture that I've done. So this space is so healing for everybody. And I'm just honored to be a part of it. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And last but not least, I want to thank everyone that has shown up for Inner Village. I mean, y'all, like, oh my gosh, this is something that we've visualized, but to see it here and experience it here with everyone, thank you all so much. We love and appreciate you. And so this conversation will be available just for Inner Village members. And so stay tuned for that. We'll post it very soon. If you have any questions, want to continue the conversation, again, you can always say hello to Nina in Inner Village, or on Instagram at Nina Pure Minds. And thank you all so much. Have a lovely evening, and we'll see you. Comments. Yes, and we'll see you in about 2 to 3 weeks for the workshop.
Yeah, couple weeks.
So, yeah, stay tuned.